All right, let's get right into this one. We're going to break down a single incredibly chilling account from a former student named Rohan. This isn't just some ghost story people tell around a campfire. This is more like an unsolved case file, an event that has literally stuck with him his entire life. And that right there is the heart of it. We're talking decades later, and what this 14-year-old kid experienced is still so powerful, so real to him, that it completely blurs the line between a memory and a recurring nightmare. It left him with a question that to this day has no answer. So, to really get a grip on this lifelong fear, we have to peel back the layers of Rohan's story. And it all kicks off with the setting itself, a place that was meant to be a fresh start for him. But instead, it became the source of absolute terror. You know, the power of this story really comes from the contrast. During the day, Victoria Boys' School was pretty much idyllic. Picture this beautiful, old British-era campus, golden sunlight, pine trees, postcard perfect. But when the sun went down, the focus narrows to just one spot, the dormitory's 80-meter-long corridor. And with those flickering, sickly yellow lights, it just transformed into something else entirely, something deeply unsettling. For 3 nights, everything was fine. You know, just your typical boarding school stuff. But then the 4th night hits, and in the dead quiet of 2 a.m., a sound just slices through the silence. The unmistakable, heavy sound of old leather shoes, the kind a headmaster from a bygone era would wear. And they were echoing down a corridor that was supposed to be completely empty. That sound was terrifying enough, but what happened the next morning was, in its own way, just as bad. See, when Rohan tried to tell his friends what he heard, the reaction he got, well, it wasn't exactly what he was hoping for. His friends just laughed at him. They're like, "Oh, you're a city boy. You're not used to the mountain sounds." They told him it was just a bad dream or the wind whistling through the pines, anything but what he knew he heard. So Rohan was left totally alone with this fear, and he even started to think, maybe they're right. And this is where things take a sharp turn. A senior, a guy named Vimal, happened to overhear him. But instead of laughing, he pulled Rohan aside. He actually listened. And then he validated Rohan's fear by sharing a piece of school history, a legend that was tied directly to that very corridor. And the story Vimal told him wasn't just some random scary tale. No, it was a legend about the corridor's original and maybe its permanent resident. He told Rohan all about Headmaster Whittemore. Back in the 60s, he was this strict but fair kind of guy who cared a lot about the students. So much so that every single night he would walk that exact same corridor to make sure everyone was safe in their beds. And then, one night in 1963, during his rounds, he had a massive heart attack and died right there, in that hallway. And then came the most important part. Vimal gave Rohan one very specific, very chilling rule. He said, look, no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, even if you think someone is calling your name, you do not open that door after 2 a.m. You know how it is. That warning was meant to protect him, but instead it just lit a fire under his curiosity. And that very night, Rowan was about to go from hearing the legend to living it. So as 2 a.m. got closer, Rohan just couldn't take it anymore. He had to know. Was it real? He probably told himself, I'll just take a quick peek. What's the harm? He crept over to his door and cracked it open, squinting into that long, flickering hallway. And at first, nothing. Just dead silence. But then he heard it again, that sound, leather on stone, starting from the far end of the hall and walking slowly, methodically, straight towards his room. He was just frozen there as the sound got closer and closer, and then it stopped. He looked down, and in the pulsing yellow light, there they were, a pair of perfectly polished black leather shoes standing right in front of his own bare feet. And as he forced himself to look up, he saw the full figure. It was just a tall, dark shadow in the shape of a man, but the eyes. Rohan said the eyes were the worst part. They were shining, but totally lifeless, like 2 glass marbles. And in its hand, the figure was clutching a beat-up, old attendance register. The figure looked right at Rohan, and in this strained, breathy voice, like it was a huge effort to get each word out, it said 3 things: attendance, time, class. That's when pure panic finally kicked in. Rohan tried to slam the door shut, but it felt like something was pushing back from the other side. In a moment of absolute terror, he gave up on the door, scrambled for the small bathroom inside his dorm, and locked it behind him. And almost immediately, a hard, steady knocking started on the bathroom door. The terror was so overwhelming that he just fainted, passed out cold. The next thing he knew, sunlight was streaming in. The horror of the night was over, but the mystery was just getting started. And it's all because of what he found when he woke up. Okay, let's just break down the evidence here, like a crime scene. He wakes up on the cold bathroom floor. The door he locked is now wide open. The main door to his room is also wide open. On his bed, there's a single torn page from what looks like an ancient school register. On the page, in blue ink, is his name, Rohan, and next to it, the word absent. He said the ink was still wet. And to top it all off, a trail of wet footprints led from the bathroom across his floor and out into the main corridor.
This whole discovery created this impossible conflict for Rohan, because, as it turns out, he fell sick that day with a really high fever. Which, of course, gives us a perfectly rational medical explanation for what might have happened. But that explanation, it just can't account for the physical evidence.
So here's the central problem, right? On one side, you have the doctor's theory. Rohan had a dangerously high fever, and fevers are known to cause incredibly vivid hallucinations. The whole thing could have just been a terrifying fever dream. It's plausible, it's scientific. But then on the other side, you have the physical proof that just won't go away. A page from a register that shouldn't be there, ink that was still wet, and footprints from someone who was never there. So we're left with this one nagging question. A fever can absolutely make you see things, no doubt about it. It can play tricks on your mind. But can a fever dream physically manifest objects? Can a hallucination tear a page out of a non-existent book, write on it with wet ink, and leave a trail of wet footprints on its way out? That is the question that has haunted Rohan ever since. And honestly, it's the question we're left with too.